we get everybody documented that you've been on, and we appreciate the faces on your webcam as well. We're going to do this just a little bit differently. We are going to start with the MPHL people. We've got a presentation by our very own Tony Sambaugh that would like to share some information with you. And so he, being a very busy person, would like to go first. And I have placed him first on the agenda. So we'll give it just one more minute. I do have high noon here. Good to have everybody on, but we will just give it one more minute. All right.
Andy's done. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions before we get started? Concerns? Funny stories? It's Monday, I realize. Okay. Well, everyone, it's 12:01. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Glad you could join us today for the Statewide Lab Partnership Call. Our agenda is going to be a little bit different today. We're going to get started with the MPHL group first. Meanwhile, if you could please go ahead and put in your names if you've just logged in the last minute, including DHHS. What I'm going to do is forego the introductions of DHHS unless there are any new people. Anybody on that could share if there's new staffing with us today. All right. If none, just go ahead and sign in both DHHS and MPHL into our chat box. Thank you. We do begin today with a few changes to the Select Agent program. If you're not familiar with what a Select Agent is, it is the organisms that I train on all the time, the Bacillus anthracis, the Brucellas, the Francisellus, the Burkholderias, and Yersinia. We just recently completed, not completed the whole course, but had our BT training, which will be followed up by a challenge set for everyone. We tried to do it by online training this year. It's a tough thing to do. I would much prefer to do it on site, but with things the way they are, it would be really tough to do. So feeling it's very important to keep laboratories up to date, I had decided to go ahead and do the training via the Zoom methodology. So Tony Sambaugh is with us today and he is the RO for our Select Agent program here at NPHL, and there are a couple of changes I think we need to be aware of. Tony, I'm going to have you get started. If you want to first just speak about maybe a little as to why we're going through these changes, and then what the changes are.
Sure. Well, thanks, Karen, for letting me speak for just a few minutes. So I'm the responsible official for what we call the Select Agents here at the university. And this affects you, or you're part of this in the labs, in the hospital labs, when you do analysis of agents and you come up with an agent that Karen has trained you for trigger points that you think might be, although it's a naturally occurring, usually zoonotic agent, is a human pathogen that's highly contagious. So Karen and others in the MPHL section work with you on the identification, getting the specimen or the culture sent to us, and then Emily and her group do the further confirmation to rule it in or rule it out as a select agent. What we see mostly in the state is Francisella tularensis naturally occurring. We get it from humans that have been bitten by a cat that might have eaten a diseased rabbit. You can also get it from tick bites. So there are a variety of sources. We do see on occasion brucella in patients that usually come in from, let's say, out of the country, either come in with being sick, or they drank unpasteurized milk or goat cheese or whatever. So if we get it at the MPHL, say the culture isolate, and Emily's group confirms that it is, say, a Burkholderia or Francisella, or there are other agents, then there's a lot of paperwork involved. So the CDC over the last couple of years have transitioned from emails and faxes to an electronic reporting system. They call it Federal Select Agent Program, or ESAP, and is responsible official, and we have some alternate responsible officials. We have a timeline to reporting these to the CDC. So if it's identified by our laboratory, we have, it's called a Form 4 that we have to fill out, and there's 3 sections, A, B, and C. So we put in all the information, and we have to put down that we've contacted you within a certain period of time. And then the CDC will follow up with your laboratory one-on-one with the person we put down as the point of contact. And we usually put down the director of the microbiology lab. That's all said and done. However, if there are exposures in your laboratory, because by the time you realize that it could be one of these highly pathogenic agents, it hasn't reached a trigger point yet that Karen's talked to you about. So you've worked with it on the open bench. And CDC is very strict about this. What their guidelines are about exposure or possible exposure. It's not a punitive thing, it's a safety issue. It's a biosafety issue, because they want to know that you're being followed up either by observation, your infectious disease doctor at your facility, and maybe you're started on prophylactic medication. The thing that's different with the Form 3, there's 2 sections, A and B, and there's an appendix. So the MPHL fills out section A, and we send that electronically to through EFSAP to the CDC people. And they have a Form 3 team. And what the Form 3 team does is they should contact you as the person, point of contact that we told them, and talk about what's going on, make sure they have all the information, make sure they talk to you about what's exposure and what's possible exposure, so that the right people, if needed, are treated with antibiotics. In the past, I have worked with people and completed the form, sent it to them, had them complete it, send it back to me, and then I did it to the CDC. CDC wants to be the entity that would contact your lab and keep me out of the middle. So we fill out section A with what we thought went on and the information we've gotten from you. We send it to the CDC. The CDC will call you and help you fill out the form, and I guess basically close the case. So we used to have Form 3 and Form 4 on our MPHL website. In talking with Karen last week, I asked her to take those off because of the changes in the reporting procedure. That's all I want to say. Karen, do you have any questions to prompt me, or does anybody have any questions on the call?
I had a quick question.
Yes.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if you identify, let's say Francisella, our lab is, CDC will reach out to our lab directly to have us fill out the Form 4, and then we submit that back to the CDC?
Well, Good question. I'm not, okay, let me think about this. If we say there's no exposure, I'm not sure if they contact you or not. I'm sorry, I should have looked into that. If we say there is an exposure, then they will contact you, the Form 3 team people. They handle the exposure cases. So it's kind of changed in the last 2 years. It's taken a while to get used to. You know, we only get a couple of isolates a year, usually. So if I haven't done it for a year or two, I have to sit down and kind of figure it out again. A good question, Karen. I'll get the answer to that. You can put it on a follow-up to this phone call.
Certainly will do. And maybe I should have mentioned too that this doesn't apply to all laboratories, only laboratories that do have microbiology, even
Yes.
some laboratories that only do certain degrees of microbiology. So we'll have more information coming in the future. And I think another thing that is important to know is that CDC has been very forward in a HAN, and I don't know if anybody has seen the HAN. I will try to get it out to you, but it's in regards to suspect Burkholderia pseudomallei. We have had 3 cases, I believe, here in the United States. It's very interesting because we really haven't seen this organism. It tends to be a third world organism. We saw it back right after Vietnam War, maybe even possibly 20 years after Vietnam War. But again, as our societies become more global, we had a situation where we had a Nebraska patient that lived in Thailand for a couple of years. And I don't believe that organism was ruled as a positive Burkholderia, but it was questionable. So keep in mind that there's some of the trigger points that you will need. And let me switch real quickly to a new share and talk a little bit, just briefly as a reminder, that Burkholderia is part of the family of gram-negative coccobacilloids or small gram-negative rods. And the organisms that you can find in that family is your Francisella, your Brucellas, and your Burkholderias. I'm sorry, Mallei, but I got the wrong group. I wanted the pseudomallei. And so that would be the family of the Burkholderia pseudomallei and the Yersinia. So this is a typical good size gram-negative rod. It's not coccobacilli or small by any means. So the important thing to know is that this organism is very slow growing, anywhere from 20 or 48 hours or 72 hours, and it does vary in morphology. Did I hear any questions there?
I do have a question. So
Yes.
this is Zoe from Schuyler, or sorry, I'm in Central
Hi.
City now. We had a Yersinia last week that we sent to you guys for ID. Will we hear back from you guys when you guys finish verifying that really is what it was?
Emily, I believe, or Zoanne, I believe and Emily can back me up on this, that will go to our microbiology division. Did you send stool specimen for those
Yes.
labs who do only the multi-platform methods, but maybe like Zoanne, I don't believe your lab has a full micro lab, but this is from a molecular test.
It was a molecular test. We are working up doing some micro here for blood cultures and urine cultures, but we won't be doing stool ones here. So
yes. So that would go to our micro lab, and they, depending upon if they can recover it from the specimen, and that is the hardest thing to do. The recovery process may lose some potential just simply by transporting it for a day or so. And those stool specimens and that transport media may only be good for 2 to 3 days. I think they say 4 for sure, but Emily?
Yeah, Zoanne, if you want to shoot me an email with the patient identifiers, I can look into that with you, but I think Karen has that exactly right. Yersinia is a very difficult organism to culture. To get optimum culturing, it actually requires even a cold step in it that can make it very, very difficult. And of course, the longer it waits, the harder it is to fish out. So go ahead and send me that information. I'll look into it. But yes, you should be receiving a report back, whether it was identified as a specific species of Yersinia or if they were unable to isolate anything.
And
Hey,
so, Ann, that's a great comment. Oh, go ahead,
This
Pete.
is Pete. Well, we're talking about a Yersinia from stool here, correct?
Right.
So the issue would be that the report would be sent back to the account number that was ordered under that culture. So in some cases, we have fax numbers that people don't realize they're getting faxed to. So Emily, you might want to check to see where this is being faxed and which account number, and make sure that they're getting the result in the right place.
Yep,
Could you check on that,
absolutely.
Emily?
That
Okay.
was part of my plan once I had the patient identifier so I could see what it was ordered under.
Right, right. Thanks.
But as we see laboratories coming on board and doing the multi-platform methodologies, do be aware that if you get a hit for a positive for Yersinia, for brucella, which obviously won't be in stool, but it may be in your blood culture, or Francisella, or any of these, or something more unusual, because most of the time these organisms really do not identify on them on the multi-panel testing, because most of you in the clinical labs might not have the BT library included with that. Plus, these organisms tend to be very slow growing, non-reactive, or slowly reactive, and so they don't identify well. As you see, any of the organisms here for pseudomallei on commercial systems, they may be identified as something else, as Pseudomonas, Cepacia, as alkaligenes, something unusual. But if you see these kind of identifications, do question them. Please notify us what you have. The other comment is if you have a multi-platform methodology, please note, don't wait until 2 days later to send it. If you have that positive, save that specimen out right away. Get it to the Nebraska Public Health Laboratories as soon as possible. Any other questions?
Say, Karen, just to mention, Tony, you gave a good overview of the paperwork, the electronic reporting for select agent issues. And I just wanted to say to folks out there that every time these come up, we have to pull out the books to figure out what to do with them. So bear with us, we'll bear with you. We will be in constant contact with you to find out where we're going with these workups of these potential select agents. So every time it's different. So I just wanted you aware, Tony gave a good overview, but it is very complicated. But we gotta dot every I and cross every T, or we all get in trouble if we don't. So we'll work with you on that. Thanks, Tony.
And thank you, Emily, for putting a link on chat to the HAN that came out in regards to the Burkholz and which states. I believe it was close neighboring states, such as Minnesota, if I remember right. I know Texas was another one. So definitely in the Midwest area. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right, I'm going to go back to the agenda now. And we'll move on. For our NPHL staff, anything about COVID you'd like to share? Pete or Emily?
I never know if he's going to jump on or not.
Okay, Emily, go ahead. Anything to share?
COVID, as you all know, is still here, still ever a present thing. If you know anyone who has not been vaccinated, please urge them to do so. The data is out there that a vaccinated individual is far less likely to suffer from severe disease associated with a COVID infection. So please, I urge you all to do so. Outside of that, 99.9% of what's circulating here in the state of Nebraska is going to be a Delta. So if all of you individuals get the same phone calls we do, where people ask what variant they have, 99.9% of the time it will be a Delta. We have been keeping our eyes out for the other variants, and we have seen a couple Mu's come through, but that was generally in the late summer. We haven't seen any more trickle in since then, so it hasn't been overtaking the current Delta variant like we saw when Delta overtook the B117 strain. So that is what is trickling in on COVID. I understand that there is some shortages right now for some critical COVID reagents, testing reagents. If this is something that your laboratory is experiencing, please reach out to NPHL. We can talk about how we can help you on this. We don't ever want anybody to not be able to test or provide the testing that they see fit for their population due to testing shortages. So please reach out to us. We'll help you in any way we can.
Thank you, Emily. That was one thing I forgot on our agenda, so I'm glad you brought that up. So, any questions on COVID here?
Hey, Karen and Emily, this is Christy from Bryan Medical Center. Are you
Hi.
still wanting all positive COVID specimens sent for variant testing, since Delta is 99.9% of all of them?
I'm going to let either Emily or John, I think John's on as well, speak to that.
John, are you hopping on for that one? He's here. I will verify with him if he's not able to come. I know he gets pulled away a lot when he's here.
John is on, I think.
I would.
Yep.
Oh, there he goes. Are you back on, John?
Yeah. Yep. As Emily mentioned, yeah, the vast majority of all specimens being sequenced right now are Delta. It would be more surprising if a specimen came in and it wasn't Delta at this point. It is, well, I don't want to refuse interesting specimens from being sent in. The focus is shifting a little bit away from general populations instead to higher risk individuals or you know, the unvaccinated specifically. This tends to mean that we're going to look at pediatric specimens as well as unusual breakthrough cases. The door is always open for a lab, a provider, a local health department. If they think that there is an interesting specimen or one associated with a cluster, we certainly can. We can certainly take those. Anytime you've got hospitalized patients that seem to be having unusually severe symptoms, certainly send it in. We'll do what we can to get that on the sequencer as quickly as possible. Generally speaking, we are receiving more specimens in a given day that could be sequenced, arguably even in a given week. So it's not a sure thing at the moment for everything to be sequenced, but I know we've got many people here in the lab that are trying to get all of them done as reasonably quickly as possible.
And the issue is not why sequence, because we all know that Delta's out there. We know it's the main one variant that we're seeing, but we're still concerned about mutational changes that may occur. So we want to keep sequencing as much as we can to be watching for any changes or any new variants that may be appearing. So John is correct. We are trying to look at certain groups of people, not necessarily every positive sample that a lab has. So kind of keep that in mind. We did put in a second sequencer. We do have the capacity to do over 300 sequences a week now, but just in the public health lab alone, we're seeing probably over 300 samples positives just from our lab alone. So we have to be somewhat selective on what we're sequencing. So that's kind of it, Karen. That's kind of where it's at.
And I asked a question because here at Brian, we are sending 10 to 25 specimens a day, which in New Alert gets to be quite cumbersome. So if we can pull back on that number, that would be great.
Certainly, no, we can, let me get a microphone here. Certainly, if you want to cut back a little bit there, Christy, I understand. If you can send me, 5 good specimens every day, 5 interesting specimens that, are unusual cases that are, again, focused on pediatric, or if you've got some unusually rural specimens, we would love those. Send those ones in, please.
Thank you.
John, I might have a question there too. Is that something the lab has to decide on, or is there a possibility for advice from pathologist or possibly from their local health department as to which ones are sent?
While there's no formal guidance on which specimens to be sent, as much as possible, we're trying to leave a lot of the discretion to providers, health departments, those that are on the ground. I don't know what's happening in every hospital, every laboratory, every clinic around the state. So I end up relying very much on my local partners there. And if local partners out in the rural areas have 1 or 2 that they think are interesting in a given week, send them on in. Bryan Health, even Nebraska Medicine, if you find that you've got a couple of interesting specimens that week, send them on in. That's perfectly fine with me. And we'll do, what we can to divide them out, probably by age and then by county of residence, and go from there. Try to get some more specimens to fill out runs every day that we can.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, John. Are there any other questions on COVID? Okay, I'd like to move on.
I can answer.
Go ahead.
Give me just one last second there, Karen. C. Sarna's there. Identification of variants. Oh, hey there, Kathy. Identification of variants for postmortem or paramortem specimens. So while we certainly can test for whole genome sequences on these specimens, paramortem specimens, it is not information that goes beyond the health department. It will not be used to inform say a death certificate or anything like that. If it's COVID, it's COVID, and it doesn't matter what variant it is.
Good question, Kathy. That comes from Lexington, so glad to have a good question there. Anybody else have any questions? Good catch, John. All right, if no other questions, I'm going to move on to the client services group. I think we have a couple of our staff on, and I just wondered if anybody from the laboratories have questions for our client service people. Any questions about transport, couriers, anything that client services would like to share?
This is Brian Lenz. I'd like to mention that the Nebraska Medicine, which performs ova and parasite tests, and the West Nile test, is preparing to ship that out to a reference laboratory, which is ARUP. There'll be more information coming out in the lab alert regarding that. But those 2 tests, the ova and parasite for foreign travel, and the West Nile, both serum and CSF, will in the future be sent out to a reference lab.
Okay, good to know. However, they can still send it through NPHL or regional pathology, right, Brian?
Correct. Shipping to regional pathology services or the Nebraska Public Health Lab will not change.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Client Services. And I thought I'd just quickly ask about the new alert. If there's any questions from the collection part or data entry into new alert. There is training on the NPHL website. It's simply a step-by-step screenshot way of entering into new alert. So if you're not familiar with it and need to possibly bring on that system, we would prefer it all tests being sent via new alert. It's just an easier, better way to do it than handwriting everything. So any questions there? Kathy does have a question in reference to her question above. She was told that that it was needed for the death certificate in regards to the COVID variants. So that's an inconsistency from what I think John said earlier, that it's not needed. Who can we confirm that with?
I am not sure. Kathy, would you let me know who was requesting that, and I can get a little bit of context. I will put my I'll put my email down in the chat there for you.
Perfect. So
that must be a clinician that they want it confirmed, but yeah, we haven't had to. That's not an official vital statistics requirement for COVID to be listed as a cause of death on the death certificate to have it sequenced. So that is not a vital statistics requirement. It must be a clinician, request.
That was our DHH staff, Robin Williams. And so that leads me into the DHHS updates. So I did put a reminder in on behalf of our EPI department that any request that needs to be sent to the CDC must first be approved. Usually you start with your local health department, who then brings it to the EPI staff. Please don't just send the specimen out. Make sure that the approvals are there before you even send it in the mail. Unfortunately, it requires a lot of paperwork. We can walk you through that paperwork, but it makes the process go much faster. So with that reminder, I don't know if Matt's on. I haven't seen the list to see Matt there.
He's not available today.
Okay. All right. Robin, do you have anything to update us on?
Well, RSV did go down just a little bit. The last reporting week, it's a late RSV season because, we go by respiratory season. So we'll see if it continues on, or if we actually have a 2021-22 RSV season. So we'll see. Not sure what it's going to do. Same with influenza. Not sure what it's going to do. If anybody sees any positive influenza tests, please consider collecting a specimen to send to the public health lab. We will have our Sentinel providers start receiving their collection kits here in the next couple of weeks, and our Sentinel laboratories. But also, if you have any hospitalized patients that you need collection kits, we can always get you collection kits to send a specimen in for influenza as well. For those who are submitting ELR, I guess I'll be doing a check to make sure that all your feeds are continuing to work and sending us all the influenza and other respiratory disease data. For those who are not currently sending ELR, you will need to start reporting if you're not already still reporting to the weekly flu survey. That will include RSV and also, and it will include flu. If you are interested in onboarding for ELR, please let me know and I'll get you in touch with our onboarding team. It'd be great to, if you do ELR, all respiratory viruses are reportable. And if, so please keep that in mind. If you do a panel, they are all reportable, and we are participating in NERVS, National Respiratory and Enteric Virus Surveillance. And we will be in touch with those labs that I have not already been in touch with for us to send that data to CDC on your behalf. So we'll have to get the official permission for that from you if I haven't already contacted you in the past. You know, we were planning on doing this a couple of years ago, but then COVID hit and all plans all went to heck. So we're very close to submitting that to CDC, and we will let those labs who are currently submitting their data know that they can stop reporting when we get that set up. I know that's been a long-standing goal of mine, so hopefully we can get that up and running very shortly.
Thank you, Robin. Would you mind just expanding your description of the influenza surveillance program, just for those who might not be familiar with it? I think most are, but just in case.
In like reference to laboratory testing or just other systems and what everything I collect?
Yeah, how does it work? Do all laboratories or just certain laboratories?
Well, at this point, if you see flu, please send it in, because there is no flu and we want it all. You know, if you see one, because we need specimens and CDC needs specimens, WHO needs specimens. You know, if it comes to the point where we actually have a flu season, you know, you might not have, we might say stop sending, but at this point, if you have a flu, we really want to know about it. So there's not going to be very many restrictions on submitting influenza samples to the public health lab this year, and unless something happens. You know, it's all crystal ballish, you know, we'll see. So,
right. And what you spoke of, the boxes, there is a set group of surveillance sites that you ask them to collect specimens of anybody who has a influenza-like illness, which they call ILI. I think you have maybe 20 not laboratories, but it could be doctor's offices, could be providers.
Right now we have 17 Sentinel providers, which are outpatient clinics. And then I try to have at least one Sentinel laboratory in every health department jurisdiction. And the ILI definition has actually changed this year. So ILI is now considered fever plus fever and cough and or sore throat. So the without a known diagnosis is now gone. So that will start capturing a whole bunch of other things. I'm still looking for those cases that are positive for flu. If you submit it, it'd be, please have it, if you can, negative for COVID. If it's negative, if it's positive for anything else, you know, I would not send it. But if your physicians are like, this is totally flu, it looks like flu and it came up negative, that's usually with the rapids. we will take it. But if you have PCR and it's positive, that's most likely flu. And then if you ever get any unsubtypables, please call the lab or me ASAP, and we can get those confirmed. We don't want any variants or new novel influenza viruses out there that we don't know about. We don't have time for that. So please let us know.
Yeah, truly. Any questions for Robin?
Robin, this is Gerald from Syracuse. I was going to tell you the 4th we go live with a new vendor, so we'll be dropping off electronic reporting. We'll have to start all over. It's going to be great.
Oh,
So,
Okay, so you'll be faxing all of your reports until you get onboarded again?
yeah, we have a meeting to start with a new vendor, but you know how long it takes. It'll take us probably 6 months to a year to get back online. So,
Yay!
yeah, terrible.
Okay.
well, Gerald, if, when you get to that point, give DHHS a call to see if there's any way they can help too.
Well, we will. Once we start doing the validation testing, it's directly with the HHS, so it'll be
Right.
starting meetings with the new vendor. It's a long process. We took us 2 years to get what we have up, and we're up, and now we're going to be back down. So,
Well, then you'll get to do our weekly flu survey again. Yay.
Yeah. Well, I think Lauren was already sending this to you anyways, but maybe not. I don't know. So,
Okay.
All right. Any other laboratory questions?
I guess with COVID, we got hit again. I'm sure a lot of you guys I don't know if you guys got the memo about another recall on coag. So we lost about 800 tubes today. So fortunately we had some BD, but the grinders got recalled again, a bunch of them. So we lost almost a whole case of coag tubes. So that'll put a pin in everybody.
I was not aware of that. Is that a huge issue here for all our labs?
The used grinder is, like I said, we lost.
Anybody else have that issue?
Oh yeah, it hits us out here at York too, Karen.
Pardon?
We're running into shortages on not only blue, but green and gold as well.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, we are too on the SSTs.
All right. I don't know if that's something else that, that's kind of out of the ballpark of infectious substances, but if that's something that Emily can request nationally, we could certainly look into it.
Yeah, I was aware of these shortages. I have reached out to our regional and federal partners. Unfortunately, this is something everyone across the nation is seeing. They're to keep us updated of anything, but I haven't heard any promising news.
All right. Any other laboratory issues for Robin? All right, thank you. Thank you, Robin. Kind of going back, any Sadie or Brianna, if you're on, any other outbreak information you can share with us besides what you have shared on the last surveillance meeting?
Yeah, this is Sadie. Hi, everyone. I'm one of the enteric EPIs. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. Just wanted to let you guys know we're investigating a couple local clusters. One was a salmonella in Lincoln County, and currently we're investigating a Campylobacter cluster in Boone County. And if you are one of those laboratories that works hand in hand with the providers, doing a thorough workup with Campylobacter patients will really help us with this clustering. And I also wanted to mention we have two multi-state outbreaks. One is a Salmonella serotype Oranienburg. There's currently 127 cases in 25 states. Nebraska has 2 cases. And then we have a Salmonella serotype Thompson outbreak. There's 77 cases and Nebraska has 1 case. If you want updates on those, FDA has a investigation table core page. You can just Google investigations of foodborne illness FDA, and then you can see all this information, like where they're actively at in the investigation. I wanted to mention norovirus activity is a little low. And then I wanted to chime in on Robin's update. She mentioned NERVS, National Respiratory and Enteric Virus Surveillance System for flu. We were recently awarded the Enteric program about 2 years ago now, right before COVID hit. We got awarded funding for norovirus surveillance. So we are working together in that. So some of the labs we've already reached out to you regarding your participation. We're doing it a little bit differently than how Robin's doing it. We're using biofire syndromic trends, but we will also eventually be wanting some stool samples that are positive for norovirus forwarded to our public health lab. But just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about that so you're not confused. If Robin's reaching out to you regarding influenza or respiratory, you might also be hearing from us regarding norovirus. And I think that's it. We had a couple cyclosporas come in again. The season's pretty much over. They're still pending interviews, so I'm guessing it's international travel, but just wanted to remind you guys, if you do get cyclosporas, please forward them to our public health lab. And I think that's it. Do you guys have questions?
Any questions for Sadie? We do have one question in the chat. Diane has asked if will the ILI form change for the upcoming season to include that fever and cough and or sore throat instead of influenza-like illness? Was that the right change, Robin?
Yes. Everywhere the ILI is posted or anything for CDC or for any other projects related to ILI, this will be the new definition. It's just removing the without a other known diagnosis. So it's still the same symptoms. It's just without a other known diagnostics, except for testing purposes, if it's positive for another disease, don't send it in.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Sadie on some of our outbreaks in Nebraska? Thanks, Sadie. I know we have a few other DHHS friends on screen today, so I don't know if Derry or Dennis or Tammy are on. I saw Kristen, though, to give a TB update. Go ahead, Kristen, if you can, or if you're still with us.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. I don't really have too many updates. We have 12 cases reported for the year. We had a few cases reported in the last few weeks. There is a national TB outbreak among orthopedic equipment that has affected multi-states. We have not been affected yet, but please remember TB can be spread at the extrapulmonary sites if it is aerosolized. So please be mindful that you would follow the same precautions as you would with an airborne pulmonary case. We are expecting applicants to arrive to Nebraska, where we will be doing some TB screening, as I'm guessing we'll have some TB conditions, but we'll have more information as is upcoming. We don't have a lot of details, and we'll be working closely with our refugee resettlement program to make sure people are screened if they have been identified as TB, a Class B TB condition. That's all I have, Karen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions for the DHHS people? I'm going to consider this an open mic time. We've got a few more minutes left in today's meeting. Derry, you're here. Excellent.
Yep. Oh yeah. Hi, I'm Derry Stover. I work with our childhood lead program. I just wanted to take the opportunity to just reinforce a couple of updates in the lead testing world. So there's only there's one type of a device that there's only one really type that's approved for point of care testing for lead exposure, lead poisoning, and for blood. That's called the Lead Care 2 or Lead Care from Magellan. And while a lot of those testing occurs in clinics, you know, I know there's a handful of hospitals that use that, and also a lot of clinics that are associated with hospitals use the LeadCare2 point of care devices. So in July 6th, there was a recall on the test kits issued by the manufacturer and the FDA. So a certain batch of test kits was recalled because they could give not the right value when tested in the point of care in the machine. So the test kits themselves were recalled, not the device itself. That was July, and then as we kind of predicted, two things that we predicted happened. One was it now has led to shortages of test kits that aren't recalled, and then two, there was the recall expanded. Now, the first recall we issued, CDC issued a HON, a health alert, but on September 1st, the recall was issued for a whole new batch of lead of test kits. Now, the vendor, the company should have contacted every owner of a LeadCare2 device with this expanded recall information. I got word that CDC is not going to be issuing another HON. So what I might do is have Karen send out this recall information, this expanded recall information, just in case you know, there's any hospitals, clinics, labs that are on that use this and they haven't seen it. You know, so it looks like pretty broad recall, and I guess the end of the conclusion of this is I don't know if there's really any test kits, any testing that there might be some, but not a lot that is going to happen with LeadCare2s anytime soon. And what we are just telling people that, you know, a good alternative is to take a capillary blood sample and send that to a reference lab, and instead of doing that in the point of care, you can have that capillary sample, it doesn't have to be venous, analyzed with a higher complexity method. So UNMC does that, and also there's a handful of other reference labs outside of Nebraska that can do well, there's a couple inside Nebraska, including UMC, and there's a couple others out there that can do capillary blood testing and for lead. So that's all I'll say now, in case anyone's interested. We're looking at the number of how it's impacted lead testing in the state, and in some ways it doesn't look too bad, but when we kind of slice and dice the data, we can see that we usually peak testing in July and August, and our peak of testing of lead this year with COVID and this recall is really what our peak was about 3 years ago. So we're just we've kind of set back about 3 years or 2 or 3 years with where we're at for lead testing. So our goal is to make sure we don't we keep on lead testing, and we don't you know, pass that on and miss those cases. So anyway, that's all. We might follow up with some additional information about the recall, and that's all.
Thank you, Derry. I will be happy to send that out. I have a pretty current updated distribution list for all my laboratorians. So just let me know what you need. Any questions for Derry?
No, this is Gerald, Karen. I would say definitely has to come through you, because the problem with those smaller instruments, they usually don't go company direct and they go through distribution. And so those those letters are pretty delayed, if you know, because the distributors don't. So it's kind of critical for you guys to let us know, because they, like I said, because they go through distribution, they don't come to us that quickly.
That's too bad. Yeah, we will get that out. Okay. Does anybody else have anything from DHHS or from laboratories? This is an open mic time to bring up any topics you would like. We've got a couple more minutes. Well, hearing none, just to let you know, not so much that our LRN class was completed. Actually, we started it on September 7th, and the next part is to get their challenge set out. So I will be working on that this week. I'm hoping it will be able to go out. And LPX, also laboratories that do LPX will be working on that up until the 29th. Now that brings me to announce that originally I had put an email out to say that our post LPX webinar would be on the 28th, and that's pretty much illegal. We can't share anything until after the due date. So I will be moving that date possibly to the 30th. So watch for that note. If you already have it on your calendar for the 28th, that won't be working. I hope to get another gram stain challenge out in October. I am looking into doing packaging shipping in November, and also to bring up chemical terrorism training, which we have not done for a good 5-6 years. And I really would like to get that back on our list. So it'll be a busy fall and winter for us, and look forward to doing more training. So, all right, if anybody doesn't have any last minute questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and wish all of you a great week. Hearing none.
Thanks, Karen.
Yep. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye now.